thank you so much for the stories and the powerful impacts that all of you women that have had. I have a question for the room. How many people are alive today because they were born to a woman? Right? Like, we are all here thanks to women and thanks for all that they do and having that impact. And so we are very excited to move into our question and answer portion. Eleanor, I promise we'll get back to you to get to some more stories. But we have Brian here that is going to pass the mic for us. If you have a question for a panelist, please raise your hand. All right.
Oh, please start.
We're gonna, and as the mic is being passed, Mary Kay has a comment.
Yeah, my comment is Maria learned well how to elect officers. My daughter joined CLU and was late to the CLU meeting, and when she got there, she was president. And it was Maria and Roberta and Veronica who did that.
Hi, I'm Carl Simon with Ingham County Democratic Party. I'm the treasurer, so I appreciate the comments about treasurer. So that's kind of like what happened to me. I've been looking at the Facebook and the internet and all the things that are posted, and there's a lot of stuff out there. What I'm not seeing is discussions about the inequality in women being paid. I'm not seeing anything about women complaining about having to fill out a form that says Ms. or Mrs. or Miss, which is a form of discrimination because the men don't have to do that. The reason why I think it's important is that the GOP is going to be selecting a president, a candidate, Vance perhaps, if you've read his book, Hillbilly Elegy. Well, he thinks that women should be barefoot, pregnant, and their husbands will vote for them. They want to go backwards to all the things that you talked about, the panelists, the things that were overcome over the decades. So what do we need to do to liven up that discussion and to use that as a strategy for getting the GOP out of elected office and getting Democrats which respect the women and the equality? That's the question.
Sandy, you want? Yep, grab the mic. Thank you.
This is just my opinion. I think we have to pick our battles here. I think there's a much bigger battle than whether we're Miss or Mrs. Going on right now in this country. And I think we have to pick the battles and stick with the bread and butter issues that are important to us as Democrats in general. Feeding our kids, getting our kids to school, protecting our kids, and what he could possibly do to voting rights in this country. So, I mean, it's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but I think it's important that we stick with the bigger issues. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with her, but I also think we have to do one other thing. I think we have to let the data show for itself. I remember being on the Comparable Worth Task Force, Women's Comparable Worth Task Force, probably in the 80s. Martha Bibbs was over civil service or one of the departments, labor, at that time. And there was a great disparity between the wages of women and men at that time. And if you look at the data now, the disparity may not be as great, but it's still there. So if you tell me that this is not a he, is making more money than I am making and doing the same job as it was back then I'm gonna get angry. So I think we have to let women get angry again and recognize that there is not the equity that we want it to be, and that we have to make sure that we bring about that equity.
I'll let that. Yep, grab that mic right there. Thank you. Well,
Keep talking.
How about that? No, this was besides the environment, and my next thing is, well, I grew up in a family of 5 girls, so I never got bossed around, and until I got out, like in the workforce, I realized the difference. And not only that, most of my career is as a civil engineer, and that is a very male-dominated field, and I just had to really always stand up, and you always felt pushed away. I'd be out somewhere on the site, and
the men would talk to each other, they would just leave me out, you know, because what would I know? And I bet I had better grade point than any of them. Anyway, but, so I think it is not gone. It's gotten a lot better, but I think we should, as women, find, you know, just keep getting out there and just some way to just stand our ground and not just ignore it, because it's out there and it just needs to go away.
Thank you. Maria, and then to Diane.
Okay, what I was thinking right now is, I think as a woman, we need to be strong and speak up and not be afraid. I used to be scared, and I was even scared to ask for a day off from work. I mean, I used to have a lot of knots. I was not comfortable being around. And I think now that I learned being involved in the community, I learned to speak up and I learned how to share ideas and share my personal. I think that's what we need to do, you know, tell the women, you know, do a little soul searching. Is it helping you today? What are you doing today? Are you struggling? Are you just ignoring it and just take it in? No, we gotta do something and move forward and be together.
What I was going to say is women need to support women. Yes. I mean, that's fundamental and really step one. And I don't see enough of it, quite frankly. We all have the ability to mentor, to create space for women that can move up, encourage them, support them, find ways to involve them, and then call it out when they're put down upon or discriminated against or called names or whatever in this negative environment of campaigning. So I think women need to support women, and that's where we should be starting.
Thank you. Next question. Don't be shy. Raise your hand. You guys can ask us anything. Yeah.
Okay, Joan and then Marie.
We'll do Joan and then we'll do Marie. Thank you.
It's really a follow-up on Diane's comments. How do we, I know that we've all been very committed over the years, getting more women involved, running for public office, you know, identifying young people, young women. But I'm concerned with the current environment that more and more people, and women included, don't want to run for office. So any thoughts on what we can be doing? Because I think it's incredibly important, because our county does have a long record of women.
Outstanding.
So what thoughts of what we can be doing, all of us in this room, to be sure that we have a good field of people coming up?
I think mentoring is one great way, reaching out and identifying qualities in young women early on, and just kind of being a touch point for them, encourage them, help them find their path, because it doesn't have to be elective office. They can volunteer, they can make a difference in a lot of different ways, but raising them up and giving them the encouragement to make that step, because politics is pretty ugly right now. I mean, I was fortunate enough to serve at a time where we had mutual respect. We would fight like cats and dogs because I had one goal, and that was to beat them. But when it came to doing what's right for the state of Michigan, we did cross political aisles. You don't see that so much anymore. So, and just like I said, calling things out when they're not right. Using your voice.
Mary Kay?
I want to tell you a little story of something that happened to me at the law school. I was an adjunct faculty member at MSU Law for 25 years. And I had a young woman student tell me that she would never hire a woman lawyer because we were not as competent as the men. I was outraged by that, just outraged. And I saw as I taught that the young women were not interested in talking to other women. And so it was a struggle to try to, help them along because I was teaching a non-traditional class. It was very difficult to bring them along with what the program was, what I expected, and to make sure that they did something creative about the law in the class. So, biggest thing for me is that we've got to educate young women that the struggle is not over. They need to know that we did a lot of work, as the suffragettes did a tremendous amount of work to get us the right to vote. We did a lot of work, but it's not done. And we need to monitor it, make sure it's enforced, and we need to think about other things, issues that affect women, like you raised, and take them on. So that's my thought on that topic.
Thank you. We'll go to Bree for a question.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for being here. You guys are all women are all wonderful. I was fortunate enough to have a women's studies minor at Eastern Michigan University in the 80s. And back then, of course, we thought that things were going to get better. And we've gone backwards. You all, and I want to just mention something really positive. I'm very proud of our 14-year-old grandson because he's taking a women's studies unit at DeWitt High School, believe it or not. And I said, that makes you WOKE, my friend. Anyways, but my question, and you've all really touched on this a little bit, but if you, and of course, registering students is mine and Clerk Byram's passion, and we partnered very well in 2024. But if you were standing in front of a group of young women at MSU in the fall, going into the midterms, preparing to vote, and I've interacted with tons of students, and sometimes they feel like they're not knowledgeable enough to vote and these types of things. Maybe a one-liner, what would you say? That's my question.
That's a great question, and I was thinking about who I was going to pitch that question to, and I would like to hear from all of the panelists if you would like to answer that question. I'll start to my left.
I would say your vote is your voice. And if you don't exercise your right to vote and be an informed voter, you have silenced your voice. And that's not what you came to Michigan State to do, right? So I would say your vote's your voice.
I was taught very early in my labor movement that voting affects everything you do. Everything. The time the clocks turn around, whether or not you're going to pay this at the grocery store, what amount of money is being paid at the gas station, what school your kids are going to go to, how much money is going to be allocated to the school. Everything you do, and that's one of the things that I have preached and that kept me active as long as I was, is that everything you do, and if they go through their mind, like it was pointed out, the phone that's in their hand is being monitored, and it's being legislated on uses and whatnot. The computer that they rely on, especially the very young, they got to have one or two of them in their hand all the time, and they don't realize that those are being controlled or not controlled the way we would like them to be controlled. So that would be my answer.
I guess my answer is twofold. One is vote, participate in the election process, but also look in the community and see what's going on and involve yourself in the community you live in. Learn more from other people and always leave the message behind of the importance of the vote.
I would say study the issues, know what the issues are, think for yourself with an open mind, and don't let AI make the decisions for you. Make your own decisions.
I've had enough of AI already.
I think this is really important, what we're talking about. I agree with everything that's been said here. I think one of the things young women do not understand is history, and it is coming back to haunt them. You brought that up, and some of you brought that up. They don't understand where it's really going to go and how serious it is, and that their vote will make a difference. So a lot of young women have no idea about elective office. They don't know what it is or what they could do. And so on. So I think we really have to keep it top of mind all the time when we're talking to people that we think we can recruit for office, who would be wonderful in public office, and where they ought to start and mentor them, as we have been talking about. But being an older woman who's lived through an era way before anybody can imagine, I mean, we really have come a long way, but it's like fits and starts, a few steps forward and then a few steps back, and we're about to be yanked back. So we really ought to talk about that when we talk about the importance of the vote.
I'll bring the mic back this way.
I think that women need to always call it out when they see, being treated, and even in discussions and everything, you can tell you're not considered as strongly as maybe the men are on too. So I think you should just stand your ground and call it out. Don't stop. And I also this is a little side, but I hear the same thing happening about anti-government. People need to call out too that we need our government. We need a strong government. We need strong women. And you can't. The government, individuals can't run this country alone. You can't do everything alone. You need somebody to take care of the common and everybody, and we need our government. And so I just think calling things out at all the time when you hear, like comments about women, comments about the government. I hear it a lot because I do tours at the distillery, and so anything you mention about liquor control or that, they're like, the government, blah, no wonder, blah, 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 but it just, we need to call everything out when we hear it. That's not right.
Being an American with a Mexican descent, my mom never talked about politics. Like I said earlier, politics wasn't in our home. And very first time I voted, I was 34 years old. Because my mom said the only people who can vote was who own homes. So I remember, and I was working at GM, I was in my scooter job, and it was an election, and I remember this guy walking around, did you vote today, did you vote today? And looking at everybody, and everybody would say, yes. And he looked at me, and I lied right through my teeth. I said, yes. And I said to myself, oh my God, these people are so young and they already own a home. So the day that I bought my home, I registered to vote. That's when I found out through APRI and LACLA that I could have been voting since I was 18 years old. So a lot of it has to be education. And especially within the family. Like I said, in my family, they don't talk about voting, they don't talk about politics. Now my older brother, I got a sister who will be 86 this year, and she's now been involved with her politics in her home for the past 15 years, and now she'll talk about it, but when I look back, so I'm thinking if my family does that, there's a lot of Mexican families or Latino families in the same boat. What I admire about these younger kids from this first or second generation, they do understand how important it is to vote and encourage other people. And I think that's why with my LACLA chapter, I'm the president. I've been the president since 2008, and nobody wants my job. I told them I want to retire from this. I just want to help out. But I noticed, that's why I talk to them a lot. When those kids help us out do the lip drop, how important it is to vote. One kid asked me, why are we doing this? I go, a family will read this to see what helps them within their family, their community. And he's the one that said, I want to be a lawyer, but I'll never go to college. And I said, why? And that's when he told me that his family's poor. I said, no, this is what you got to do. Keep your grades up, apply for scholarship, and I don't know what happened to him. I haven't seen him since. But I always encourage, and we always talk about how important it is to vote. And I got to tell you this real quick. When I was working in the plant, they were having elections, leadership elections. And I would say, you guys are going to go vote? Oh, heck no, it don't matter, this and that. They're just going to be the same ones. I said, well, then actually, you're just giving them their vote. They go, what? And I said, yeah, if you don't vote, they'll just take it. That's how come we got the same leadership. Because every time I used to go vote, there was a short line. I walked in, walked right out. That day, when I went to work, there was a line out the door. I stood there and I looked at them and I said, did I do something? Because all of a sudden, everybody was in line voting. I'll never forget that. I said, I get, even though I don't know whether it was true or not, but I said that to encourage them to go vote, and they did. So I think education has a lot to do with it. Yes, we need to vote.
Absolutely. Thank you. We are going to take one more question from the audience. If there's a burning question, right behind you, Brian.
First, thank you all. You women are absolutely an inspiration, and thank you for being here. My name is Angie Bellin, and my question is to Diane Byron. You had mentioned when you did your introduction, and brick by brick, and then building up to get women. And then you stopped and you said, and then I termed out. And I have to ask, term limits are controversial, but I have to ask if they affect, particularly how short they are here in Michigan, if they really, they seem to affect both women and minorities from getting that momentum going to bring more in, and then boom, you turned out. So do you have an opinion on how term limits should work, or if they...
I have lots of opinions on term limits. I do think they are better now that the law has been, or the Constitution has been amended so that I believe it's 12 years, either house, any combination. So Michigan's term limits were among the most restrictive in the nation, and it really did shorten people's ability to have a career, and I think it's public service. I never thought of myself as a politician. I spent a lot of my time in public service because I cared a lot about issues and the people that I represented. So I think it's better, but it clearly makes it difficult for women to run and serve in office. And it makes it difficult for people mid-career to take a step out of their career and serve in public office and then come back. So it has a lot of unintended consequences that I think are pretty negative. But it is better. I'd like to see it maybe amended again, but that probably won't happen. I think we were quite lucky to be able to have the coalition come together and put reasonable term limits in place for Michigan, or more reasonable term limits. Thank you for the question, though.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's give another round of applause for our panelists. I have to say this. I'll let you do it. I'll let you I have to say this. It was incredibly humbling to sit up here and listen to all of the stories and the different ways that all of the women at this table impacted politics and our democracy. And it was almost impossible for me to sit up here and stay in my role as moderator and not answer some of the questions. So I really appreciate it. This was great. I just have to leave you all with this. Women are over 50% of the population, and that's why I asked that question at the beginning about who was born to a woman. We're over 50% of the population, but only represent, on average, 28 to 33% of elected offices. We certainly have a long way to go. Women are very much often the unpaid, unrecognized labor of what helps this world go round. We know that the impact of the women here today, I 100% stand on the backs of the women at this table and the women in this room. I was 23 years old when I first ran for office and was elected. And I am so thankful for the example that was set by these women. And when we were doing this, Brian said to me, he said, I know you normally have an entourage, referring to my little one that's normally with me. I have a shadow 90% of the time, because that is what we do. We show the young women what they can do. She's a young girl, and she goes, okay, that's what mommy's doing today, and that's what we can continue to do and show our young women. So I thank you. I thank you all so much. Thank you so much again to our sponsors and the leaders today that thought to put this together to talk about the different experience and the historic impact of women leaders, because we are not done. It's not the historic impact of women leaders, it's the continued ongoing impact of women leaders. And I so thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. I just really quick want to recognize our candidates because I know this is important to the election cycle that we need leaders going forward. So appreciate to have Bridget Brick here, and we got Will Lawrence, and Matt Madstone here. So they have 3 congressional candidates here to spend time. And I'm sure they got really educated today on the history here, but we also have Mark Holsthofer here, or Mark over here as well. Irene Cahill came in as a county commissioner. Of course, Barb Byram has a very big, who's going to Detroit. Make sure you connect there. Right, for the convention as well. Elected officials, we have Chris Swope here as clerk we got a busy election season ahead. And I think, any other candidates that I missed? Oh, Tawan back here, right, for state representative as well, for Kara Hope seat. So talk with these candidates. These are the folks who we are looking to them to lead us going forward to in this effort to follow the footsteps of the folks at the table. So thank you all very much. And the memorabilia here is really cool. Take pictures and check that out. The protests that we hear from the 1960s, and so it's just great. So let's continue the conversation until they kick us out. Thanks.